He opened his eyes in a strange bed and an alien girl whispered, "Your mind now." The awakening. First thing Captain Elias Ward noticed wasn't the throbbing pain in his skull or the strange, pulsing light filtering through what appeared to be living walls. It was the smell, something between ozone and flower petals, completely alien yet oddly comforting. His eyes fluttered open to reveal a ceiling that seemed to breathe, its surface rippling with bioluminescent patterns that shifted like aurora across organic curves. "Finally awake, are we?" The voice was melodic, carrying an accent he couldn't place if it was even an accent at all. Elias turned his head, immediately regretting the movement as pain shot through his neck, and found himself staring at the most beautiful and terrifying sight of his life. She stood beside what he now realized wasn't a bed but some kind of healing pod, her violet skin shimmering with an inner light that made her appear almost ethereal. Golden markings traced intricate patterns across her face and down her neck, disappearing beneath clothing that seemed to be made of the same living material as the walls. Her eyes large, luminous, and completely without iris or pupil fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You're mine now," she said simply. As if commenting on the weather, Elias tried to sit up, his military training kicking in despite his disorientation. "I'm what? Who are you? Where am I?" The questions tumbled out as he took in his surroundings, definitely not the bridge of the UES Defiant, where his last memories placed him, the alien girl. For despite her otherworldly appearance, there was something unmistakably feminine about her. Tilted her head with what might have been amusement. "I am Zixara of the Velter, and you are aboard the living ship Whisper of Stars. As for what you are," she paused, her glowing eyes studying him with scientific curiosity. "You are the first human to survive the life-bonding ritual. Congratulations." "The what now?" Elias managed to swing his legs over the side of the pod, noting that someone had dressed him in clothing similar to his captor's if she was his captor. The material felt strange against his skin, warm and almost responsive to his movements. "When I found you floating in the debris field of your destroyed vessel, you were perhaps 30 seconds from death," Zixara explained, moving with fluid grace to what appeared to be a control surface grown from the wall itself. "My people have a saying, life calls to life. The ritual was meant to stabilize your failing biology, but it created something unexpected." Images flashed through Elias's mind: the battle with the Kethmer Raiders, the hull breach, the desperate evacuation order he'd ignored to buy his crew more time. He remembered the void claiming him, the cold, the fading light. "My ship, my crew, safe. Your sacrifice allowed their escape pods to reach the colony." Zixara's expression softened, and for a moment, her alien features seemed almost human. "It also marked you as someone worth saving, according to our cultural protocols. And this bonding thing, normally performed between our own kind, it creates a spiritual and biological link. The ritual assumes mutual consent and compatible genetics. You, however, were unconscious, and your species was completely unknown to our procedures." She moved closer, and Elias caught that strange floral scent again. "The result is unprecedented." "How unprecedented are we talking?" Zixara's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "According to our oldest texts, you are now my Velthari, roughly translated as soul-bound warrior. The role combines aspects of protector, life partner, and spiritual guide. It's considered the highest honor among my people, and I don't get a say in this. Traditionally, no. The bond is considered sacred, unbreakable, ordained by the cosmic currents themselves." She paused, her luminous gaze meeting his. "But you are not Velter, are you? Your people have different customs, different beliefs about choice and freedom." Elias studied her face, trying to read emotions in features that followed no human template. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that perhaps it's time some traditions evolved. But first, you need to understand what you've stepped into, Captain Ward. My people believe your rival fulfills an ancient prophecy, and they're very eager to meet their prophesied human." Great, Elias thought, just great. The prophecy and the politics walking tour of the Whisper of Stars proved two things to Elias. First, that Velter biotechnology made human engineering look like stone tools, and second, that he was definitely the center of unwanted attention everywhere they went. Other Velters stopped their activities to stare at him with those unsettling, luminous eyes. "Try not to take it personally," Zixara said, noticing his discomfort as they passed through what she called the Harmony Gardens, vast chambers, where the ship's living systems were tended by beings who looked like they'd stepped out of a fever dream. "You're the first alien most of them have ever seen, and given the circumstances." "Right, the prophecy thing." Elias paused beside a tree that was clearly growing computer interfaces. "Instead of fruit, want to fill me in on that? Because where I come from, prophecies usually mean someone's about to have a very bad day." Zixara's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The Chronicle of Far-Touched Stars speaks of a warrior from the void who would arrive in our darkest hour, bound by sacrifice and sealed by the life ritual. This warrior would bridge the gap between our peoples and lead us to victory against the devourers of light, the Kethmer. Indeed, your timing is notable. The Kethmer have been pushing deeper into Velter space for 3 cycles now. Our defensive fleets are scattered, our colonies under constant threat. Then you arrive, a human military officer, having sacrificed himself for his crew and survived our most sacred ritual." She gestured to the markings on her arms, which seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. "The signs are difficult to ignore." They entered what appeared to be a command center, though it looked more like the inside of a massive flower than any bridge Elias had ever seen. At its center stood a being that made Zixara look plain by comparison taller, with skin that shifted between deep purple and silver, wearing robes that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. "Velenix," Zixara said, her tone becoming formal, "I present Captain Elias Ward." The far-touched one, Velenix's gaze fell on Elias like a physical weight. When they spoke, their voice resonated from multiple directions at once. "So, the prophecy bearer awakens. Tell me, human, do you feel the pull of destiny in your bones, honestly?" "I mostly feel like I need coffee and a shower. Maybe some answers that don't involve cosmic fate." Elias crossed his arms, matching the being's stare. "No offense, but I've got a crew to get back to and a war to fight. I didn't sign up to be anyone's chosen one." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to everyone's surprise, Velenix began to laugh, a sound like crystal bells mixed with solar wind. "Oh, this is delicious. Zixara, your bondmate has the irreverence of a true warrior. I approve." "He's not my," Zixara began, her skin darkening with what might have been embarrassment. "The life bond was performed," Velenix interrupted. "The signs are clear. The prophecy aligns. What remains is the question of whether our young human will embrace his destiny or flee from it." "I don't flee," Elias said quietly, "but I don't take orders from prophecies either. If you want my help fighting the Kethmer, fine. They're humanity's enemy too. But I do it as a free ally, not as some mystical chosen one." Velenix's expression shifted, becoming unreadable. "And the bond with Zixara." Elias glanced at the violet-skinned woman who'd saved his life. She was watching him with an intensity that made his chest tight. "That's between us, no prophecy, no tradition, no cosmic destiny gets to make that choice." "Fascinating," Velenix murmured. "A bondmate who rejects the bond, yet honors the one who forged it. Perhaps the old ways do need modification." "What do you mean?" Zixara asked, her voice carefully controlled. "I mean, dear child, that perhaps it's time we learn something from our human guest about the power of choice. But first, he must understand what he's choosing between." Velenix gestured, and the walls around them shifted, becoming transparent. Beyond lay the vast emptiness of space, dotted with the running lights of what had to be hundreds of ships. "The Velter fleet," Velenix explained. "What remains of it? 3 days ago, the Kethmer launched their largest offensive yet. 7 colony worlds have gone dark, and our scouts report a massive fleet moving toward our core systems. We have perhaps 2 weeks before they reach our home world." Elias studied the formation with a military officer's eye. The ships were beautiful, organic curves that seemed to dance rather than fly, but their deployment was all wrong for the kind of defensive action they'd need. "You're spread too thin, and those formations won't hold against a concentrated assault." "Precisely. The assessment of our war leaders," Velenix agreed, "which is why the prophecy's timing is so convenient." Or suspicious, Elias muttered, but he was already thinking tactically. If the Kefmer were making their big push now, humanity's colonies weren't far behind the firing line. Personal prophecy or not, this was his fight too. He looked at Zixara, who was watching him with those impossible eyes. This bonding thing, what exactly does it mean for us? That, she said softly, is what we need to figure out. Understanding the bond next morning found Elias in what Zixara called the learning chambers, though they looked more like a cross between a library and a greenhouse. Books, if they could be called that, grew from the walls like luminescent fungi, their pages shifting and reorganizing themselves as he watched. The beauty of living information, Zixara explained, settling beside him on what appeared to be a chair grown specifically for the purpose. It adapts to the reader's needs and comprehension level, right? Elias muttered, poking experimentally at a book plant that immediately sprouted text in what looked like English. Just when I think I've seen everything weird about this place. You show me the reading garden. You should see the combat training groves, she said with that wine chime laugh. They actually fight back, despite everything. Elias found himself smiling. You know, for someone who's supposed to be my mystical life partner, you've got a decent sense of humor. Zixara's skin darkened again, definitely embarrassment. He was learning to read her expressions. About that, I should explain what the bond actually means, practically speaking. I'm listening, she gestured, and one of the wall books extended a tendril toward her. Instead of text appearing on its surface, images began to form Develter figures surrounded by flowing energy that connected them in an intricate pattern. The Velthari bond traditionally creates a psychic link between compatible individuals. Shared emotions, enhanced empathy, the ability to sense each other's well-being across vast distances. The images shifted, showing the bonded pair in various scenarios fighting together, healing each other, their energy patterns synchronized. In times of great stress or danger, the bond can allow for shared strength, enhanced reflexes, even temporary sharing of specialized knowledge. That sounds, Elias paused, trying to process the implications. Actually pretty useful in a combat situation. It's not just about combat, Zixara said quietly. The bond traditionally leads to deep emotional connection, often romantic love. It's considered the most intimate relationship possible among our people. And you performed this ritual on an unconscious alien. I performed a life-saving medical procedure on a dying being, she corrected, her tone sharpening. The bonding was an unintended consequence of biological incompatibility, not a deliberate claim. Elias studied her face, noting the tension around her eyes. You're getting pushback from your people about this, aren't you? Some believe I should have let you die rather than risk contaminating our sacred rituals. With alien influence, her skin patterns shifted to deeper hues. Others think I should enforce the traditional bond regardless of your consent. Neither option sits well with me. What do you think? I think, she said carefully, that I saved a life and inadvertently created a situation that neither of our cultures has protocols for. I think that maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Before Elias could respond, the chamber's walls suddenly shifted to deep red, and an harmonious tone filled the air. Zixara was on her feet. Instantly, her whole demeanor changing. What's happening? Alert status. Something's wrong. She was already moving toward the exit, her grace replaced by military efficiency. Come on. Your tactical expertise might be needed. They reached the command center to find it in controlled chaos. Volnix stood at the center of the organic displays, their usually calm demeanor replaced by focused intensity. Report, Zixara called out. 3 scout vessels have returned from the outer rim, Volnix replied without turning. The Kefmer fleet is larger than our worst projections, and they're not alone. The display is shifted, showing long-range sensor data that made Elias's blood run cold. The familiar wedge shapes of Kefmer destroyers were there, but alongside them were ships he didn't recognize, angular, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them. Those aren't Kefmer, he said quietly. No, Volnix agreed. Our scouts believe they're the Shaltek, a species the Kefmer conquered 2 cycles ago. It appears our enemies have been recruiting. Elias studied the formation, his mind automatically calculating vectors, firepower, and strategic implications. This isn't just a conquest fleet. This is genocide-level firepower, indeed. And they'll reach our core systems in 8 days, not 14. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's living systems. Elias felt everyone's attention focused on him, and he suddenly understood why prophecies were such a burden. "You want my assessment?" he asked. "Please," Velenix said formally. "Your current defensive strategy won't work. You're thinking like a peaceful civilization trying to protect territory. But this isn't about territory anymore, it's about survival. You need to start thinking like humans, which means," Elias looked around the room, meeting those luminous alien eyes, "it means we don't just defend, we attack. We make them regret ever pointing their ships at your worlds." "The human suggests offensive action," one of the other Velter said, their tone skeptical. "Our way is harmony, balance. Your way is about to get you extinct." Elias interrupted. "Look, I respect your culture, but right now you need to decide. Do you want to preserve your perfect philosophical balance, or do you want to preserve your people?" Velenix was quiet for a long moment. "What do you propose?" "Give me access to your tactical databases, your fleet compositions, your technology specifications. Let me show you how humans fight when we're backed against the wall." He glanced at Zixara, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. "And let me know if this bond thing comes with any practical benefits, because we're going to need every advantage we can get." "The tactical benefits are considerable," Zixara said slowly, "but they require trust, emotional openness, and a willingness to share not just strength but vulnerability." "Are you willing?" Velenix asked, their question clearly directed at both of them. Elias looked at the tactical display again, at the impossible odds, at the faces of beings who'd saved his life and were now looking to him for salvation. Then he looked at Zixara, whose violet skin was now marked with patterns he was beginning to recognize as determination, mixed with fear. "Yeah," he said finally, "I'm willing. Question is, are you ready to learn how humans wage war?" The smile that spread across Velenix's face was sharp as a blade. "Show us." The art of human worth transformation of the Velter fleet over the next 5 days was something that would be talked about in their histories for generations to come, assuming there were any generations left to tell the story. Elias had expected resistance to his tactical suggestions. What he hadn't expected was how quickly the Velter adapted once they understood the principles. "Your people learn fast," he admitted to Zixara as they watched a squadron of Velter fighters execute a perfect, human-style pincer maneuver around a practice target. The organic ships moved with fluid grace, but now that grace served deadly purpose. "We've had to," she replied, her patterns shifting with what he'd learned to recognize as grim satisfaction. "The Kethmer taught us that our old ways of thinking had limits. You're teaching us that those limits were self-imposed." The past few days had been a crash course in interspecies cooperation. The bond between them had evolved, not into the mystical soul melding the prophecies described, but into something more practical and, in many ways, more intimate. They could sense each other's emotional states, share tactical awareness in combat situations, and most usefully combine their different approaches to problem solving in real time. "Target analysis complete," called out Kethver, the Velter equivalent of a fleet tactical officer. "The combined enemy force will reach the Harmony system in 3 days. Fleet disposition matches human projections." Elias nodded, studying the holographic display that showed the enemy formation. "They're confident, maybe overconfident. They think they're facing the same defensive-minded fleet they've been pushing around for months. Instead, they'll face something new," Velenix said, approaching with their usual dramatic flair. "A hybrid doctrine combining Velter biotechnology with human tactical philosophy. Your species has an interesting approach to warfare, Captain. We call it winning." Elias said dryly. "The specifics vary, but the goal stays the same, yes. I've been studying your historical records. Your species has a remarkable talent for turning disadvantage into advantages. The Battle of Thermopylae, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the defense of Terra Prime." Velenix paused, "Though I must say, your tendency toward dramatic last stands is somewhat concerning." "Sometimes dramatic last stands are the only option," Elias replied, "but this doesn't have to be one. We've got advantages they don't know about. Such as, Zixara stepped forward, her hand briefly touching Elias's arm. Through their bond, he felt her confidence mixed with nervous excitement. "Show them," she said quietly. Elias nodded and gestured to the tactical display. "The Kethmer and their allies are expecting to fight the Velter. They've studied your tactics, your ship capabilities, your response patterns, but they haven't fought humans, and they definitely haven't fought a hybrid force." The display shifted, showing the planned battle formation. Instead of the traditional Velter defensive clusters, the fleet was arranged in something that looked like a three-dimensional spear point. "We hit them hard and fast, right up the middle," Elias continued. "The Shaltech ships are powerful but slow to maneuver. The Kethmer are fast but vulnerable to concentrated fire. We use Velter biotechnology to coordinate our movements and human tactics to exploit their weaknesses. And if they adapt," Kethmer asked, "then we adapt faster," Zixara said, her voice carrying new authority. "The bond network will allow near-instantaneous tactical communication across the entire fleet. They'll be reacting to our last move while we're already executing our next three." The bond network. Volinix's eyebrow ridges rose. "You've managed to extend the bonding principle to the entire fleet." "Not exactly," Elias admitted, "but close enough, Zixara, and I can serve as a tactical nexus, coordinating between human strategic thinking and Velter intuitive responses. It won't be perfect, but it'll be faster than anything they can match, assuming the bond holds under combat stress," Volinix pointed out. "It will," Zixara said firmly. Though Elias caught the undercurrent of uncertainty through their connection. They'd tested the bond extensively, but never in actual combat. "There's something else," Elias said, calling up another display. "The Harmony system has unusual gravitational properties. 3 gas giants in close orbit around a variable star. The Kethmer will use the outer planets as staging areas, assuming they can control the engagement distance." "But," Volinix prompted, "but humans have a saying, never fight fair in a fair fight. We're going to use the gravitational anomalies against them, pull them into the inner system where their numerical advantage becomes a liability." The next few hours were spent refining the plan, running simulations, and preparing for what everyone knew would be a battle that would determine the fate of not just the Velter, but potentially dozens of other species in the region. The Kethmer expansion had to be stopped here, or it might never be stopped at all. That evening, Elias found himself alone with Zixara in the observation chamber, watching the stars wheel by as the fleet made its final approach to the battle zone. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "Not of dying, that's always a possibility in war, but of failing, of letting my people down, of proving that the bond was a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," Elias said quietly. "Whatever else happens, saving my life wasn't a mistake. Even if it changes everything, even if we win tomorrow and both our peoples have to figure out what a human-Velter alliance means for the future." Elias considered that. The past week had shown him just how much potential there was in combining human determination with Velter wisdom, but it had also shown him how much he cared about the strange, beautiful woman beside him, not because of any mystical bond, but because of who she was. "Especially then," he said finally. "Change is scary, but it's also necessary. Your people were stagnating in their perfection, and mine were getting too comfortable thinking we were the toughest species in the galaxy. Maybe we needed each other, and us," she asked quietly. "What do we need?" Elias felt the bond between them, warm and steady, carrying emotions too complex for words. "I think we need to win this battle first. Then we can figure out what comes next, together." The alarm that suddenly filled the chamber cut off any further conversation. Through the transparent walls, they could see the enemy fleet dropping out of hyperspace ahead of schedule, their ships dark against the stars like a plague of locusts. "So much for our timeline," Elias muttered, already moving toward the command center. "But maybe that's good. They're eager, which means they're making mistakes. Time to see if human tactics and Velter wisdom can save the galaxy," Zixara said, her tone mixing fear and excitement. "No pressure," Elias replied, but he was smiling as he said it. The real test was about to begin. Part 5. The battle for everything harmony system erupted into chaos. As soon as the first shots were fired, the Kethmer, true to their nature, opened with a massive barrage meant to shatter the Velter formation before the battle truly began. What they hit instead was empty space the fleet had already moved, flowing around their fire like water around stone. "First blood to us," Elias said, watching the tactical display from his position beside Zixara on the command deck. Through their bond, he could feel her coordinating with dozens of ship commanders simultaneously, turning the entire fleet into a single, responsive organism. "They're confused. They expected you to sit still and take it." "Human lesson number 1, Zixara murmured, her eyes glowing brighter as she managed the tactical network. "Never be where your enemy expects you to be." The combined enemy fleet was massive, nearly 300 ships arranged in the traditional Kethmer hammer formation, with the crystalline Shaltech vessels serving as anvils at key points. Against them, the Velter could field barely 80 ships, but those 80 were now moving with purpose and coordination that made them seem like far more. Initiating Maneuver Delta, Kethmer announced, "All squadrons, prepare for deep strike." What followed was something that had never been seen before in galactic warfare. A biotechnological fleet executing human shock tactics with perfect precision. The Velter ships dove into the heart of the enemy formation, their living hulls adapting to absorb incoming fire while their weapons targeted the junction points Elias had identified in the combined fleet's structure. "It's working," Velenik said, their voice carrying amazement. "The Shaltech are breaking formation to protect their command ships and leaving the Kethmer flanks exposed," Elias added, feeling the battle flow through the bond he shared with Zixara. "Execute Gamma Strike, all wings." The outer squadrons of the Velter fleet, which had been hanging back as apparent reserves, suddenly accelerated into the gaps created by the Shaltech repositioning. It was a classic double envelopment, but performed with Velter biotechnology that allowed the ships to coordinate their movements like a school of fish. "Enemy command ship is signaling retreat," Kethmer reported. "They're trying to pull back to the outer system." "Let them," Elias said, surprising everyone. "They're running right into the trap." The gravitational anomalies of the Harmony system were what made the trap possible. As the enemy fleet retreated toward what they thought was safety, they found themselves caught in the complex gravitational web of the 3 gas giants. Ships that had been in perfect formation suddenly found themselves struggling against tidal forces that their rigid tactical doctrine couldn't adapt to quickly enough. "Now," Elias said quietly. The killing blow came from an unexpected direction. While the enemy was focused on the main fleet, a small squadron of Velter ships had been hiding in the shadow of the innermost gas giant, using its gravitational field to mask their presence. They emerged directly behind the enemy command formation, their weapons charged and ready. "The Kethmer Admiral's ship is destroyed," Zixara reported, her voice tight with the effort of maintaining the fleet-wide bond. "Their formation is collapsing." What followed was less a battle than a rout, without centralized command and caught in an increasingly unstable gravitational environment. The combined enemy fleet began to break apart. Some ships tried to surrender, others attempted to flee, and a few fought on with desperate courage that Elias had to respect even as he ordered their destruction. "It's over," Velenik announced as the last major enemy formation surrendered. "The Kethmer expansion is broken. The surviving ships are too few to threaten anyone." The command center erupted in celebration, but Elias barely heard it. The bond between him and Zixara had been stretched to its limits during the battle, and now that the immediate crisis was over, he could feel the deeper changes it had wrought in both of them. "We did it," Zixara said softly, her luminous eyes meeting his. "We actually did it." "We did," he agreed, but his tone was thoughtful. "Question is, what happens now?" "Now," Velenik said, approaching them with something that might have been a smile, "we figure out what it means to have humans as allies. I suspect it will be interesting." "The prophecy mentioned bridging the gap between our peoples," Zixara said. "I think we can safely say that part has been fulfilled." "And the rest of it?" Elias asked. "The part about forging our own path?" She was quiet for a moment, her patterns shifting through colors he was still learning to read. "I think that's up to us. The bond doesn't have to define us, but it doesn't have to limit us either. We can choose what it means. And what do you choose? I choose a partner who challenges me, who makes me better than I am alone. I choose someone who sees beyond prophecies and traditions to what could be. She paused. Her hand-finding his. I choose you, Elias Ward, not because of destiny or bonds or ancient texts, but because of who you are, even though I'm a stubborn human who doesn't believe in fate. Especially because of that. Elias looked around the command center, at the alien faces that had become familiar, at the displays showing the broken enemy fleet, at the woman whose violet skin had become as dear to him as any human features, you know. He said finally, I think I'm starting to like this whole prophecy thing, even if I did have to rewrite the ending. The ending? Zixara asked. The part where we live happily ever after. I prefer the version where we live interestingly ever after. Her laugh was like music in the crystalline air of the ship. I think I can manage interesting. Good, Elias said, pulling her closer as the stars wheeled around them, carrying them toward a future that no prophecy had ever imagined. Because I have a feeling we're just getting started. The war was over. But the adventure, the real adventure, was just beginning. And for the first time since waking up in a strange bed with an alien girl telling him he was hers, Elias Ward found himself looking forward to what came next. After all, the universe was a big place, and there were plenty of other species out there who could probably benefit from learning a little bit about how humans and their allies fought for the things they cared about. The story of the bond between human and Velter was just the first chapter in a much larger tale, and Elias was eager to help write the rest of it, the end.